I was folding the third hand-knitted sweater when my phone rang. The cable knit pattern had taken me longer than I'd expected, 73 hours over 3 months to be exact. Kelly green, my granddaughter Emma's favorite color, with little embroidered turkeys dancing around the collar because she'd always loved the Thanksgiving parade on TV. Every stitch was a prayer, every row a memory I was trying to weave into something she could wear. "Cordelia," I answered, tucking the phone between my shoulder and ear so I could keep working on the sleeve. "Hi, honey." My daughter's voice came through with that particular edge I'd learned to recognize over the years. That tone that meant she was about to say something I wouldn't like, but she'd already decided I had no choice but to accept it. "Mom," she didn't even say hello. "Lionel and I need to talk to you about Thanksgiving." My hands stilled on the soft wool. Through my kitchen window, I could see Mrs. Patterson next door hanging her autumn wreath on her front door. Normal. Everything was still normal. "Of course, sweetheart. What time should I come over? I was thinking of bringing the turkey early so I can get it in your oven by... Actually, we've decided to do something different this year." I set down Emma's half-finished sweater and gave the phone my full attention. 30 years of being a mother had taught me when to stop multitasking and really listen. Different how. "We're doing an adults-only Thanksgiving this year. You know, wine pairings, sophisticated dishes. It's really not going to be appropriate for everyone." The silence that followed felt like falling, like that moment in a dream when you miss a step and your stomach drops before you wake up. Except I wasn't going to wake up from this. "I'm an adult, Cordelia," she laughed. That light, dismissive laugh she'd picked up somewhere along the way, probably from Lionel, or from the women in his social circle who wore their sophistication like armor. "You know what I mean, Mom. It's going to be very formal, very curated. Lionel has some important clients coming, and we really need to make the right impression. This could mean a major contract for his firm." "But I'm your mother." "Exactly." Her voice softened, but not in a kind way, in a pitying way. "Which is why I knew you'd understand. Maybe next year we can do something more casual, more traditional. Traditional. Like the 42 Thanksgivings I'd hosted for her. Like the recipe book I'd started the day she was born, adding a new dish every year, writing notes in the margins about what she loved and what made her laugh. Cordelia asked for extra marshmallows on the sweet potatoes. Age 7. Cordelia helped roll the pie crust today. Age 12. First time. So proud. Cordelia brought Marcus home for Thanksgiving. He ate 3 slices of pumpkin pie. Age 23. Marcus. Before Lionel. Before the big house in the West Hills and the private schools and the life where her mother's home cooking apparently wasn't sophisticated enough. "Cordelia, I've already started preparing. I've been working on the kids' sweaters since August. I have your grandmother's pie recipe ready. I've ordered the..." "That's actually another thing." She cut me off, and I could picture her in her gleaming kitchen, probably looking at her reflection in the stainless steel refrigerator, making sure she still looked perfect while she shattered her mother's heart. "Your home cooking is wonderful, Mom, for what it is, but we've hired a professional caterer from Portland, someone who studied at Le Cordon Bleu. We really need everything to be, how do I put this, more sophisticated." I sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where Cordelia had done her homework for 12 years, where I'd taught her to knead bread, her small hands pressing into the dough while flour dusted her nose, where we decorated cookies every holiday season for 20 years, laughing as we tried to pipe perfect snowflakes and always ending up with abstract blobs that we ate anyway. "Not sophisticated enough," I repeated quietly. "Don't take it personally. It's just a different style than what you do. Your cooking is very comfort food, nostalgic, but Lionel's clients expect something more elevated." Emma's half-finished sweater sat on the table in front of me. 73 hours of work so far. The little turkeys around the collar had each taken me an hour to embroider, their tiny feathers stitched in 6 different colors of thread. "What about the kids?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Can I at least see Emma and Jake?" "They'll be there, obviously. It's Thanksgiving, but like I said, it's a formal affair. Late dinner adult conversation. You'd be bored, Mom." There it was, the real message underneath all the pretty words. You're not sophisticated enough. Your food isn't good enough. You don't fit into the life we've built." "I understand," I heard myself say, and I hated how automatic it was. How many times in my life had I said those words when I didn't understand at all? "I knew you would. You're always so reasonable, Mom. Listen, I have to run. Lionel and I have a tasting with the caterer in 20 minutes. Love you." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a long time, holding the phone, looking at Emma's sweater, looking at the photo album I'd been working on for 3 months, Cordelia's Thanksgivings through the years. 42 photos, one for each year of her life, each one labeled in my careful handwriting, each one a memory of laughter and burned rolls and her chocolate-covered face at age 5 when she'd snuck frosting before I could stop her. The doorbell rang. I wiped my eyes quickly. When had I started crying? And went to answer it. David Walker stood on my porch, holding a brown paper bag with the tops of apples peeking out. "From your tree," he said with that gentle smile that had become familiar over the past 6 months. "Thought you might want them for Thanksgiving pies. I remember you mentioning that was your specialty." David had moved in next door in May, a widower like me, retired from teaching high school English like I'd retired from teaching elementary school. We'd fallen into an easy friendship over shared cups of coffee and gardening advice. He was the first person in 5 years who'd made me think that maybe, possibly, life after being needed by your children could be something other than just waiting. "Come in," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He took one look at my face and set the apples down on the entry table. "Agatha, what happened?" And somehow I told him everything. About the phone call, about adults only, about my cooking not being sophisticated enough, about 3 months of preparation for a Thanksgiving I wasn't invited to. "That's ridiculous," he said firmly, and the anger in his voice on my behalf made something inside me crack open. "You're her mother." "She's busy. Her life is different now." I picked up Emma's sweater, running my fingers over the embroidered turkeys. That big house, Lionel's career, the private schools for the kids. I don't fit into that picture anymore. "So what are you going to do?" I looked at him, at this kind man who'd lost his wife 2 years ago, who told me he spent last Thanksgiving eating a hungry man dinner alone in front of the TV, who'd mentioned just last week that the hardest part of the holidays was the silence. "I don't know yet," I said slowly, "but I'm not going to let all this preparation go to waste." The idea started forming then, small at first, like a seed, but it had already begun to grow. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all those Thanksgivings. Every single one of them had been for Cordelia, even after she'd moved out, gotten married, had children of her own. It had always been about making sure she had the perfect holiday, making sure the kids had traditions, making sure everyone felt loved and fed and connected to something bigger than themselves. And now I was... what? Embarrassing? Not sophisticated enough for the life she'd chosen? At 3 a.m., I got up and made myself a cup of tea. Sat at my kitchen table with a notepad. Started writing. By the time the sun came up, I had a plan. The next morning, I drove to Portland Community College. Found the Student Center bulletin board covered with flyers for roommates wanted and textbooks for sale and club meetings. I pinned up my notice right in the center. Thanksgiving dinner for students who can't go home. Home-cooked traditional meal. Free. Limited spaces. Call Agatha, 503-555-0147. Then I called the women's shelter on S.E. Powell. Asked if they had families who needed somewhere to go for Thanksgiving. "We have a mother with 2 young children," the director said. "Carmen Rodriguez. She's been with us for 6 weeks, trying to get back on her feet. The kids are 5 and 7. Tell her she's invited," I said. "And if there's anyone else, this is very kind of you, Mrs. Ravenscroft." "Agatha, please. And it's not kindness, it's just..." I paused, looking at the 3 half-finished sweaters on my couch. "It's just that I've made too much food for one person." After that, I started knocking on doors in my neighborhood. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, 3 houses down, opened her door in her gardening gloves, soil under her fingernails. Agatha, what a nice surprise. Eleanor, I'm hosting Thanksgiving dinner this year. Would you like to come? Her face went through several expressions: surprise, confusion, then something that looked almost like relief. But don't you usually go to your daughter's? Change of plans. It'll be casual, traditional home cooking, nothing fancy. I haven't had Thanksgiving with people in 5 years, she said softly. My kids are both in Europe now. Video calls just aren't the same as sitting around a table together. Then you'll come? I'd love to. Next, I knocked on Jake and Melissa Turner's door. They were young, late 20s, with a 6-week-old baby girl who seemed to cry every time I walked past their house. Melissa answered with the baby on her hip, dark circles under her eyes, spit up on her shoulder. Mrs. Ravenscroft? Agatha, please. I'm hosting Thanksgiving dinner, and I'd love for you and Jake and the baby to join me. No need to bring anything, just yourselves. Oh, I don't know. She looked back into the house, overwhelmed. We haven't been sleeping much, and the baby's been fussy, which is exactly why you should come. You can nurse her while eating pie. You can take a nap on my couch if you need to. I promise there will be no judgment, only support. Her eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? 3 doors down, Robert Sullivan's house sat dark most evenings. I'd learned from Eleanor that his wife had passed away last spring. Cancer, quick and brutal. I knocked anyway. He answered in a cardigan, reading glasses perched on his nose. Agatha, hello. Robert, I'm hosting Thanksgiving. Would you like to come? He blinked. I don't want to impose. You wouldn't be. I'm cooking anyway. Might as well cook for people who actually want to eat it. Something shifted in his face. My wife used to make this dumpling dish every Thanksgiving. Not traditional American food, but it was her tradition from her childhood. I haven't had them since she died. Bring them, I said immediately. If you can make them, or if you know how. Thanksgiving is about sharing what you love, isn't it? He smiled for the first time since I'd met him. I'll be there. By Wednesday evening, David had helped me set up 2 long tables in my backyard, borrowing chairs from his church. I'd pulled out every tablecloth I owned, every dish, every piece of silverware. My house looked like a restaurant in preparation, and it felt right. It felt like I was building something instead of just surviving the collapse of what I'd lost. I started cooking at midnight on Wednesday. The turkey went into its brine, a 2-day process using my mother's recipe, the one she taught me when I was 26 years old and pregnant with Cordelia. Salt and brown sugar and herbs from my garden, the bird soaking in a mixture that would make it so tender it would fall off the bone. At 4 a.m., I started the stuffing. Sage bread, onions, celery, and that secret ingredient my mother had passed down, dried cranberries and toasted pecans. Cordelia used to pick out the pecans when she was little, making a pile on the edge of her plate before eating the rest. By Thursday morning, my kitchen smelled like every Thanksgiving I'd ever known. Like home, like love, even if my daughter didn't think it was sophisticated enough for her new life. I made sweet potato casserole with the marshmallow topping that Cordelia used to sneak bites of when she thought I wasn't looking. Green bean casserole with the crispy onions on top. Cranberry sauce from scratch, the berries popping in the pot like tiny fireworks. Parker House rolls that I'd shaped by hand, each one brushed with butter until they shone. And pies, 3 of them. Apple made with David's apples from my tree, the lattice crust woven so carefully that each strip was exactly half an inch wide. Pumpkin with extra cinnamon because Emma loved cinnamon. And pecan with a leaf cut out on top because it was beautiful and because beauty mattered, even if, especially if, no one was going to judge it by Michelin standards. At noon, I set my table like I always had. Autumn leaves scattered down the center, real ones collected from my yard, still red and gold. Candles in my grandmother's brass holders, the ones she'd brought from Poland in 1952. Name cards at each place setting, even though most of my guests were strangers to me. I put on the dress I'd bought from Macy's, the nice navy one with the pearl buttons that I'd saved for 2 months to afford, the one I'd thought might make me look sophisticated enough for Cordelia's new life. I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, this is enough. I am enough. At 2 p.m., the doorbell rang and my new Thanksgiving began. 3 college students arrived first. Tyler Morrison stood on my porch looking uncertain, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. Behind him were Jessica Chen and Brandon Hayes, all of them carrying that particular tension of people who aren't sure if they're in the right place. Are you the one who posted about Thanksgiving dinner? Tyler asked. I am. Come in, please. Jessica stepped forward and I saw her eyes were already wet. Is this for real? Like actual Thanksgiving? With turkey and everything? With turkey and everything, I confirmed, and 3 kinds of pie. I haven't had real Thanksgiving since my grandmother died 2 years ago, Tyler said quietly, and something in his voice reminded me of Cordelia at that age, before she'd learned to polish away her vulnerability. I ushered them inside, took their coats, showed them where the drinks were. They stood awkwardly in my living room, taking in the decorations, the photos on the wall, the comfortable chaos of a home that had been lived in and loved for 40 years. Carmen Rodriguez arrived next, holding the hands of her 2 children. The little girl, maybe 5 years old, clutched a worn stuffed rabbit. The boy, 7, looked around with wide, cautious eyes, the look of a child who'd learned not to expect good things. Mrs. Ravenscroft, I'm Carmen. This is Sophia and Miguel. The shelter said, Agatha, please. And yes, you're exactly where you should be. I knelt down to the children's level. Hi, Sophia. Hi, Miguel. Do you like pumpkin pie? Sophia nodded, still holding her rabbit tight. Well, I made one just this morning, and later, if you want, you can have as many marshmallows from the sweet potatoes as you'd like. Really? Miguel asked, and the hope in his voice almost broke me. Really? Mrs. Patterson arrived with a bottle of wine and tears already streaming down her face. I haven't had Thanksgiving with people in 5 years, she said, exactly as she'd said it before. But this time she was here, standing in my house, holding wine that we'd drink together. David came next, changed into a suit jacket, carrying a bouquet of chrysanthemums. For the hostess, he said with a small bow that made me laugh despite everything. Robert Sullivan arrived last, carefully carrying a covered dish. I made my wife's dumplings, he said. They're not perfect like hers were, but I tried. She always said Thanksgiving was about sharing what you love, and I loved her. Then they're already perfect, I told him. By 3 p.m., 15 people sat around my tables, strangers and neighbors, young and old, broken and healing. The conversation rose and fell like music, awkward at first, then gradually finding its rhythm. I served the turkey, carved it the way my mother had taught me, watched as plates filled with stuffing and casseroles and cranberry sauce, listened as forks clinked against plates, and people made those small sounds of satisfaction that mean the food is good. Tyler took his first bite of turkey and froze. His fork clattered against his plate. Oh my God, he said, and then he was crying, full-on sobbing into his napkin. I'm sorry, this is so embarrassing. It's not embarrassing, I said gently. My grandmother used to make it like this, exactly like this. I haven't had real Thanksgiving since she died. He wiped his eyes. I didn't realize how much I missed it until right now. Jessica reached over and squeezed his hand. Nobody said anything about him crying. We just let him feel it. Sophia, the little girl from the shelter, tugged on my sleeve. Miss Agatha, can I have the marshmallows now? I gave her the entire bowl. She carried it back to her seat like it was treasure, and her mother Carmen looked at me with such gratitude that I had to turn away. The meal continued. Mrs. Patterson told stories about Thanksgivings past, the year her husband accidentally set the tablecloth on fire, the year her son brought home a vegetarian girlfriend, and she had to learn to make tofurkey. Robert shared memories of his wife, how she'd come to America at 19, how she'd always made sure their Thanksgiving table included something from her homeland. Brandon, the art student, asked if he could sketch the scene. For my portfolio, he explained. This is what I want to capture. Real people, real connection. Around 4:30, Jake and Melissa arrived with their baby, apologizing profusely for being late. The baby was crying. Melissa looked exhausted, and Jake seemed overwhelmed. It's fine, I assured them. More than fine. Sit down. Eat. If you need to nurse her, go ahead. If she needs to cry, let her cry. This is a judgment-free zone. But something magical happened. Maybe it was the warmth of the house. Maybe it was the full bellies and genuine laughter. But baby Charlotte quieted down. And when she did fuss, Tyler took her, walking her around my living room while Melissa ate her first hot meal in what was probably days. "You're good with babies," I observed. "Youngest of 6, Tyler said, rocking Charlotte with practiced ease. I basically raised my little sister. There was a minor incident around 5 p.m. One of the college students, I think it was Brandon, had a bit too much of Mrs. Patterson's wine and started talking loudly, gesturing expansively, nearly knocking over a water glass. David quietly intercepted, suggested some coffee, walked him to the porch for fresh air. Crisis averted with minimal fuss. This was real. This was messy and imperfect and beautiful. This, I thought as I watched them all, this is what Thanksgiving is supposed to be. I was in the kitchen cutting more apple pie when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. The number said Cordelia. My first instinct was to let it go to voicemail, to protect this perfect bubble I'd created from whatever she wanted now. But 42 years of being her mother is a hard habit to break. "Hello? Mom? Mom? Where are you?" Her voice was strained, panicked. "I've been calling for an hour." "I'm at home, honey, having Thanksgiving dinner." "What? But I thought, never mind. Listen, Mom, I need you to get over here right now." The words came out in a rush. "Can you bring your pumpkin pie? Actually, bring everything you have. The turkey, the stuffing, anything." I could hear chaos in the background. Voices raised in anger, what sounded like dishes clattering. "I don't understand. I thought you had a caterer." "The caterer," she paused, and I heard Lionel's voice, sharp and furious, saying something about pretentious garbage and complete disaster. "Mom, the food is inedible. It's all foam and gels and things served on rocks. Lionel's clients are here. They're expecting a real meal, and I need you to—" "I can't." Silence. "What do you mean you can't?" "I mean I can't, Cordelia. I'm having Thanksgiving dinner." "Mom, don't be difficult. This is important. Lionel's career depends on this. We need you." I looked through my kitchen doorway. At my dining room where 15 people sat around tables full of food. Where Tyler was still holding the baby. Where Sophia was sneaking her 3rd marshmallow when she thought no one was looking. Where strangers had become, if not quite friends, then at least people who'd shared something real together. People who'd wanted me there. Who'd appreciated my not sophisticated enough cooking. Who'd asked for recipes and packed up leftovers like they were gifts. "You needed a caterer," I said calmly. "You got one." "Mom!" Her voice rose, angry now instead of pleading. "Don't do this. I apologized, didn't I?" "You did?" This was news to me. "I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry about what I said. Your cooking is fine. It's great. Just please come." "Fine. Great. Not I was wrong. Not I hurt you. Just your cooking will do since my better option failed." "I'm having Thanksgiving dinner, Cordelia, with people who wanted me here." "What people? What are you talking about?" Her voice pitched higher. "Who's there?" "Would you like to see?" I turned on the video call before she could answer, pointed my phone toward my dining room, let her see the full tables, the laughter, the half-empty serving dishes, the warmth. Her face filled my screen. She looked perfect, as always. Hair professionally styled in loose waves. Makeup flawless. That expensive foundation she told me about that cost more than my monthly phone bill. She wore a burgundy designer dress with a cowl neck that probably cost what I spent on groceries for a month. But perfection couldn't hide the expression on her face as she looked at what I was showing her. Confusion first, then something that looked almost like hurt, then anger. "Who are these people?" she demanded. "My Thanksgiving guests, the ones who appreciated an invitation." "Mom, this isn't funny. I need you to—" "No." The word came out stronger than I'd expected. Louder. Tyler looked over from the other room, concerned. David appeared at my elbow, a silent support. "No, Cordelia. You made it very clear I'm not sophisticated enough for your life, that my cooking isn't good enough, that I don't fit into the picture you're trying to paint for Lionel's clients. I didn't mean you did mean it, and that's okay. You're entitled to want a different kind of life. I took a breath, felt David's hand on my shoulder, steadying. But I'm entitled to spend my Thanksgiving with people who actually want me there. People who don't think my 42 years of tradition are something to be embarrassed about. This is unbelievable. Lionel's voice, loud enough that I could hear him without seeing him. Is she seriously going to embarrass us like this? I have to go, I said. My guests need dessert. Mother, I ended the call. My hands were shaking. The phone felt heavy, like it weighed 1,000 pounds, like I'd just done something that couldn't be undone. You okay? David asked quietly. I thought about it. Really thought about it. I think so, I said. Actually, yes, I'm okay. We served dessert. The college students debated good-naturedly about which pie was best. Tyler voted for pumpkin. Jessica insisted the apple was superior. Brandon made a passionate case for pecan. Sophia and Miguel got whipped cream mustaches that made everyone laugh. Mrs. Patterson taught Carmen a lullaby her own mother had sung to her in Polish, the words strange and beautiful in her elderly voice. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again and again. I ignored it while we ate pie, while we played a chaotic game of charades in my living room, while Robert taught the college students how to fold origami cranes from the napkins, his weathered hands surprisingly deft, while Jake and Melissa fell asleep on my couch, baby Charlotte between them, all three of them finally at peace. When I finally looked at my phone, there were 7 text messages. Cordelia, this is unbelievable. Cordelia, you're really going to do this? Humiliate me in front of Lionel's most important clients? Cordelia, fine. We'll figure it out ourselves. Cordelia, don't expect us to forget this. Then, 45 minutes later, from a number I didn't recognize. Unknown. Cordelia, we need to talk about your mother's will and the college fund we previously discussed for the children. I stared at that message for a long time. It was from Lionel. It had to be. Using a different phone, probably thinking I wouldn't recognize his phrasing. Previously discussed. As if we'd had some agreement. As if my money, my assets, my life savings were already earmarked for them. I read it again and again. This was it. The real reason they kept me around. Not because they loved me, not because they wanted their children to know their grandmother, but because I was a financial safety net. Emergency grandmother services, the Bank of Agatha. My vision blurred. Not with tears this time, with clarity. Cold, sharp, painful clarity. I blocked both numbers. Grandma? The small voice came from my phone around 9 p.m. after most of the guests had left. I'd been washing dishes, David drawing beside me, both of us comfortable in the silence. I didn't recognize the number. Hello? Grandma, it's Emma. I'm using Dad's old phone. Mom doesn't know I'm calling. My heart jumped. Emma, sweetheart, are you okay? I'm okay. Her voice was quiet, careful. Grandma, I'm sorry about Thanksgiving. I wanted you there. I told Mom, but she said it was grown-up stuff and I wouldn't understand. She said you'd be bored. I sat down at my kitchen table, suddenly needing the support. It's not your fault, honey. Mom's really mad. She's been crying all evening. Dad's yelling. They've been fighting since the guests left. She paused. The dinner was awful, Grandma. The caterer made weird stuff nobody liked. There was this foam thing that tasted like nothing, and meat served on a hot rock that you had to cook yourself. And Dad's most important client said it was an interesting experiment, which I think meant he hated it. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Sometimes fancy isn't better. Mom kept saying she should have just invited you in the first place, that she made a terrible mistake. Emma's voice got smaller. But then Dad said some stuff about money and you being difficult, and they started fighting again. Money, of course. Grandma? Emma's voice cracked. I miss you. Can I still come visit you? Just me? Even if Mom's mad? I looked at the half-finished green sweater on my couch. the one with the turkey embroidery that had taken me an hour per bird. Looked at the photo album, Cordelia's Thanksgivings through the years, still sitting where I'd left it. Always, I said firmly. My door is always open for you and Jake. Always. Even though Mom and Dad were mean? You're not responsible for your parents' choices, Emma. I love you. That doesn't change. I love you too, Grandma. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time. David had finished the dishes without me, had quietly made tea, had set a cup in front of me without saying anything, just being there, the way good people do. "What are you thinking?" he finally asked. "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that some things need to change." The next morning I made a list. I'd always been a list maker. Grocery lists, to-do lists, Christmas card lists. This list felt different, heavier, more final. 1. Call lawyer, revise will. 2. Leave house to charity, domestic violence shelter. 3. Set up trust for Emma and Jake, accessible at 25. 4. Not one penny to Cordelia and Lionel. 5. Cancel Cordelia's name on all accounts. 6. Recurring donation to women's shelter. 7. Sign up for watercolor class with David. 8. Book flight to see Margaret in Arizona. 9. Volunteer opportunities at community college. 10. Live for myself, not for people who see me as a resource. I looked at the list for a long time. Imagined Cordelia's face when she found out. Imagined Lionel's reaction. Imagined the arguments, the accusations, the attempts to manipulate me back into place. And then I thought about Sophia's face when I gave her the bowl of marshmallows. About Tyler crying over turkey because it reminded him of his grandmother's love. About Carmen telling me she hadn't felt this safe in months. About David painting my Thanksgiving table because he thought it was beautiful. I picked up the phone and called my attorney. Margaret Lawson had been my lawyer for 15 years, ever since my husband passed away and left me to figure out estates and wills and all the paperwork that comes with death. "Agatha," she said warmly when her secretary put me through. "How was your Thanksgiving?" "Different," I said. "Margaret, I need to revise my will." "Of course. Are you thinking minor changes or a complete overhaul?" "Complete overhaul." There was a pause. Margaret was good at reading silence. "Tell me what you need." I told her everything, about Cordelia's call, about the Thanksgiving I'd hosted instead, about Lionel's text message that had revealed what I really was to them, not family, but a financial asset to be managed. "I want the house to go to the domestic violence shelter. I want a trust set up for my grandchildren that they can access at 25, for education, for starting their lives, whatever they need. But nothing, absolutely nothing, goes to Cordelia or Lionel." "That's very clear," Margaret said carefully. "Agatha, I have to ask, is this a decision you're making in anger? Because if you want to take some time, I've had 42 years to think about it," I interrupted gently. "Every Thanksgiving I hosted, every sweater I knitted, every time I rearranged my life to be available when they needed me. And you know what I realized yesterday? I can't remember the last time Cordelia asked about my life, about what I wanted, about who I was beyond mom, an emergency babysitter, and financial backup plan. That's heartbreaking." "It is, but it's also clarifying." I looked out my window at David's house, where I could see him in his garden, probably picking the last of his vegetables before winter set in. "I have maybe 20 good years left, Margaret. Maybe less. I don't want to spend them waiting for crumbs of appreciation from people who've made it clear I'm not sophisticated enough for their world." "And let's make it legal," Margaret said. "Can you come in Monday?" "I'll be there." I spent the weekend finishing Emma's sweater, and Jake's. And then I started 3 more. One for Sophia, one for Miguel, one for baby Charlotte. Children needed things made with love. Children needed to see that someone cared enough to spend 73 hours making something just for them. David came over Sunday afternoon with leftover containers. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what you said on Thanksgiving, about not letting preparation go to waste." "Yes?" "My house is bigger than yours, has that huge dining room I never use. I was thinking maybe next year we could host Thanksgiving together. Invite more people. Make it even bigger. I smiled. I'd like that. And maybe... He hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. Maybe between now and then we could do dinner sometime? Just the two of us? There's a new Italian place downtown that everyone's been talking about. David Walker, are you asking me on a date? I suppose I am. For the first time in 5 years, since my husband had died and left me wondering if I'd ever feel anything but duty again, I felt something flutter in my chest. Hope, maybe, or possibility. Then yes, I'd love to. He left with the leftover turkey and a smile that made him look 10 years younger. That evening, Emma called again from her secret phone. Grandma, Mom wants to come talk to you. She said she needs to apologize in person. Should I tell her no? I thought about it. About 42 years of being a mother. About the little girl who used to help me roll pie crusts. About the woman she'd become, polished and sharp and so focused on appearing successful that she'd forgotten what actually mattered. Tell her I'll be home Tuesday afternoon, I said. But Emma, no matter what happens between your mom and me, you and Jake can always call me, always visit me. That doesn't change. Promise? Promise. Tuesday came too fast and not fast enough. I'd spent Monday morning at Margaret's office, signing papers that felt like both an ending and a beginning. She'd been thorough. The house to the shelter, the trust for Emma and Jake, ironclad, unreachable by their parents until they turned 25. A significant donation to Portland Community College's Student Emergency Fund. Everything else split between charities I'd chosen carefully. Cordelia's name appeared nowhere in the document. You're sure? Margaret asked one last time. I've never been more sure of anything. Now it was Tuesday afternoon, and Cordelia's Mercedes pulled into my driveway at exactly 2 p.m. She was always punctual, always precise. It was one of the things Lionel loved about her, she'd once told me, her efficiency. She looked tired when I opened the door. Her perfect facade was cracking. Makeup couldn't quite hide the dark circles. Her designer clothes, a cashmere sweater and tailored pants, hung a little looser as if she'd lost weight. Mom, can we talk? Come in. I led her to the kitchen table, the same table where I'd taught her to separate eggs, where we'd frosted birthday cakes, where she'd told me she was pregnant with Emma, and I'd cried with joy. She sat down, ran her fingers over the wood grain like she was trying to remember something. Lionel's clients canceled their contract. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? She looked up at me, and for just a second I saw my daughter. Not the polished woman she'd become, but the girl underneath, uncertain and afraid. I'm sorry it's causing you stress, I said carefully. But no, I'm not sorry I didn't drop everything to save your dinner party. It wasn't just a dinner party. That contract was worth $2 million over 3 years. Lionel's firm was counting on it. And they canceled because the food was bad? They canceled because... She stopped, started again. Because the wife, Mrs. Peterson, told me that anyone who would treat their own mother the way I treated you wasn't someone they wanted to do business with. She said it showed poor character, poor judgment. The words hung between us. I want to apologize, Cordelia finally said. I was wrong. What I said was cruel. You didn't deserve that. No, I didn't. Can we go back to how things were? I looked at my daughter, at this woman I'd given 42 years of Thanksgivings to, who I'd taught to cook and laugh and love, who'd somehow, somewhere along the way, learned that success meant leaving behind the people who'd helped you get there. No, I said quietly. We can't. What do you mean we can't? Cordelia's voice rose. Mom, you didn't just uninvite me from Thanksgiving, Cordelia. I kept my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding. You told me I wasn't good enough, that 42 years of love and cooking and tradition were embarrassing to you, that I didn't fit into your new life. You were trying to impress Lionel's clients by humiliating your mother. She flinched like I'd slapped her. And then, I continued, when you needed me, not wanted me, needed me, you expected me to drop everything and save you. You expected me to still be the mother who'd do anything for you, no questions asked. But Cordelia, you can't have it both ways. You can't exclude me when it's convenient and include me when it's necessary. So what? Her eyes filled with tears, ruining her mascara. You're just done with me? Your only daughter? I'm done being taken for granted. I'm done being your backup plan. I'm done apologizing for not being sophisticated enough for the life you chose. The tears spilled over, tracking black lines down her perfect cheeks. She looked younger suddenly, vulnerable, like the little girl who used to crawl into my lap when she was scared. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. I don't know either. I reached across the table but didn't quite touch her hand. But I know it doesn't start with you asking for my money or my cooking. It starts with you deciding whether you actually want a mother or just a resource. That's not fair, isn't it? I pulled out my phone, showed her the text message, the one from Lionel's other number. We need to talk about your mother's will and the college fund we previously discussed. Her face went white. I didn't know he sent that. But you discussed it. My will, my money, as if it were already yours. We have expenses, Mom. The house, the private schools, the lifestyle we need to maintain for Lionel's career. And I have a life, I said firmly. One that doesn't revolve around being your ATM or your emergency caterer. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. So that's it? You're just cutting me off? I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. It doesn't feel different. She grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. It feels like you're punishing me for making one mistake. One mistake? I stood too, facing her across the table that held so many memories. Cordelia, when was the last time you asked about my life? About how I was doing? About anything other than what I could do for you or the kids? She opened her mouth, closed it, couldn't answer. That's what I thought. I've been busy. So have I. I've been busy knitting sweaters your children will never wear. Busy making photo albums you'll never look at. Busy preparing Thanksgivings I'm not sophisticated enough to attend. My voice cracked, but I didn't let myself cry. Not now. I've been busy being your mother, but you've been too busy to be my daughter. That's not true. Then prove it. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Saw the fear underneath the anger. The little girl who was afraid of failing. Not today, not tomorrow, but when you're ready to have a relationship that goes both ways. When you're ready to see me as a person, not just as Mom. When you're ready to value what I offer instead of apologizing for it, then we can talk. And until then, my door is open to Emma and Jake. Always. But you and Lionel need to figure out whether you want a family or just the appearance of one. She stared at me for a long moment. I could see her cycling through emotions, anger, hurt, disbelief, something that might have been recognition. You've changed, she finally said. No, I corrected gently. I just stopped pretending that making myself smaller would make you love me more. She left without another word. I watched through the window as she sat in her Mercedes for 10 minutes before driving away, her shoulders shaking. I didn't cry. I'd cried enough. Instead, I picked up Emma's green sweater and started the final row. 6 weeks later, on a cold January morning, David and I sat in a coffee shop downtown, our watercolor class supplies spread on the table between us. You're getting better at clouds, he observed, looking at my painting of Mount Hood. You're a terrible liar, but I appreciate the effort. He laughed. Okay, fine. Your clouds look like lumpy potatoes, but your trees are improving. This had become our routine. Coffee on Tuesday mornings, watercolor class on Wednesday evenings, dinner on Saturdays. We moved slow, careful, like people who'd learned that rushing only leads to stumbling. But we were moving. My phone rang. Tuesday evening, right on schedule. Hi, Grandma. Emma's voice was bright. Guess what? I got an A on my science project. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Tell me about it. She launched into an explanation of photosynthesis and bean plants and charts she'd made. I listened, asked questions, told her I was proud. We talked for 20 minutes before she finally asked, "Grandma, Mom wants to know if Jake and I can come spend Christmas with you." My heart stuttered. "Just you and Jake?" "Yeah. She said she and Dad need to figure some things out, and she thought maybe we should have a normal Christmas, like we used to." "What did you tell her?" "I said I'd ask you. But Grandma, I really want to come. I miss you." I looked at David across the table. He'd politely pretended not to listen, but his eyes were kind, encouraging. "Then yes, absolutely yes. You and Jake can come stay with me for Christmas." "Really? Even though Mom was mean?" "Your mom is trying, Emma. It's not perfect and it's not fixed, but she's trying. And you're not responsible for grown-up problems. You're just responsible for being 12 and doing your homework and visiting your grandma when you can." "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, sweetheart." After we hung up, David reached across the table and took my hand. That sounded positive. "It's something." I squeezed his fingers. "It's not forgiveness. It's not fixed, but it's movement. Movement is good." The lawyer had called last week to confirm everything was finalized. The house would go to the domestic violence shelter when I passed. The trust for Emma and Jake was ironclad. I'd set up monthly donations to the women's shelter, to the community college student fund, to the church that had lent us chairs. Cordelia's name appeared nowhere in my will. I told Margaret to send Cordelia a copy, not to be cruel, but to be clear. So there would be no misunderstandings, no false hope, no assumptions about what she was entitled to. Margaret had called me 2 days later. I sent the will to Cordelia as requested. She called me this afternoon. She was upset. I imagined so. But Agatha, at the end of the call, she asked me to tell you something. She said, "Tell my mother, I understand." I'm not sure what that means, but I thought you'd want to know. Tell my mother I understand. Not an apology, not a reconciliation, but maybe, possibly, the beginning of awareness, the first crack in the perfect facade. "What are you thinking?" David asked now, bringing me back to the coffee shop, to the present, to this life I was building. "I'm thinking about Christmas, about having Emma and Jake here, about making cookies and watching movies and building gingerbread houses. And I'm thinking about your offer, to host Thanksgiving together next year." His face lit up. "Yeah? Yeah, your dining room is bigger. We could invite maybe 25 people, 30 even. We could make it a tradition." "We could make a lot of things traditions," I said carefully. He understood what I wasn't saying, what I was too cautious to say outright, that this thing between us was becoming more than friendship, that I was scared and hopeful in equal measure, that at 68 I was learning that life could surprise you with second chances if you were brave enough to take them. "One step at a time," he said gently. "But Agatha, I'm not going anywhere." "Neither am I." I finished Emma's sweater on a Wednesday night, sitting in my living room with David reading beside me. The green cable knit, the embroidered turkeys, 73 hours of work completed at last. Then I started on Sophia's, the little girl from the shelter who'd eaten marshmallows like they were magic. Carmen had called me last week. They'd found an apartment. She'd gotten a job at a call center. Things were looking up. But Sophia still asked about me, still remembered that Thanksgiving. "She needs something warm," Carmen had said. "Something made with love." So I was making her something warm. Purple this time, her favorite color, with little stars around the collar because when I'd asked what she wanted to be when she grew up, she'd said an astronaut. Cordelia had been right about one thing, I reflected as I knitted. My cooking wasn't sophisticated. It was simple, traditional, made with ingredients you could pronounce and recipes passed down through generations. No foams, no gels, no deconstructed anything. Just turkey and stuffing and pies made with actual fruit instead of coulis or reductions. But Tyler had cried over it. Sophia had asked for seconds. Mrs. Patterson had called it the best Thanksgiving she'd had in years. Carmen had told me it was the first time in 6 months she'd felt safe enough to really eat. Turned out sophisticated was in the eye of the beholder. And I'd decided to surround myself with people who found sophistication in different things. In kindness, in showing up, in making strangers feel like family, even if just for one meal. Cordelia had her Le Cordon Bleu caterer and her important clients and her big house in the West Hills. I had 15 new friends, a freezer full of leftovers I distributed to everyone who couldn't attend, a date to the symphony with David next week, and the knowledge that when I set a table, people actually wanted to sit at it. I'd leave the door open for Cordelia, for when she was ready to have a mother instead of a resource. For when she remembered that family isn't about looking sophisticated. It's about showing up. It's about the imperfect, unfancy love that feeds people's souls along with their stomachs. But I wouldn't wait by the phone anymore. Wouldn't make myself smaller to fit into her life. Wouldn't apologize for the love I'd given or the traditions I'd kept, or the fact that my worth couldn't be measured by Michelin stars. I was 68 years old. I'd spent 42 years hosting Thanksgiving, and this year, for the first time, I'd hosted it for people who actually wanted to be there. That was worth more than any $2 million contract. "What are you smiling about?" David asked, looking up from his book. "I'm thinking about next Thanksgiving, about how many people we can fit in your dining room." "Well, the table seats 12, but we could add another table. Let's do 25, I said decisively. "We'll put out another call at the college. Maybe reach out to the VA hospital, see if they have veterans who need somewhere to go. Ask the Refugee Resettlement Center. 25 people is a lot of cooking." "Good thing I have a sous chef now," he grinned. "Is that what I am?" Among other things. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize, but I knew who it was before I even opened it. "Mom, this is Cordelia. Using a new number. I know you blocked the old one. I'm not asking you to respond. I just wanted to say I got the copy of your will from Margaret. I understand why you did it. I'm not happy about it, but I understand. Emma and Jake are excited about Christmas with you. I'll drop them off on the 23rd if that works. They'll have their gifts for you. I bought them myself this time, not from your money. Baby steps, right?" See, I stared at the message for a long time. Baby steps, right? It wasn't an apology. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't even really reconciliation. But it was acknowledgement. It was awareness. It was the first time in 5 years she'd signed a text with just her initial instead of "Love, Cordelia," like she was checking a box. It was real. I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not for a while. But I didn't block the number either. "Everything okay?" David asked. "Everything is exactly as it should be." I went back to knitting Sophia's sweater. Purple yarn, silver stars, each stitch a small act of love for a child who'd learned too young that the world could be cruel. Emma would get her green sweater for Christmas. Jake would get his navy one with the snowflakes. Sophia would get purple and stars. Miguel would get red with baseballs. Baby Charlotte would get yellow with ducklings. Because children deserved things made with love. Children deserved to see that someone cared enough to spend 73 hours making something just for them. Someone had to show them what unconditional love looked like, even if their parents were still figuring it out. Outside, snow began to fall. The first snow of the season, soft and quiet, covering Portland in white. David got up to make hot chocolate. I kept knitting, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Not just contentment, not just acceptance. Joy, pure, uncomplicated, unsophisticated joy. My daughter had said my cooking wasn't sophisticated enough for her Thanksgiving, so I'd hosted my own. And in doing so, I'd discovered that the most sophisticated thing you can do is know your worth and refuse to settle for less. The door was open for Cordelia. It would always be open. But I wasn't waiting on the porch anymore. I was inside, warm and fed and surrounded by love, knitting sweaters for children who appreciated them and planning next year's Thanksgiving with a man who thought lumpy potato clouds were charming. I was 68 years old, and I was finally, truly living for myself. The snow kept falling. David brought hot chocolate with marshmallows, extra marshmallows, because he'd learned that was how I liked it. We sat together in comfortable silence, and I thought about all the Thanksgivings to come, all the people who'd sit at our table, all the traditions we'd create, all the love that couldn't be measured in Michelin stars or dinner invitations or sophistication. Just love. Simple, traditional, home-cooked love. And that was more than enough. That was everything.